What is up, guys? ChewySlayer's back here today, guys. And today, guys, we're going to be talking about how to beat Uprising on the Legendary difficulty. So I'm just going to give you my tips and tricks to make sure your adventure into Legendary mode is the easiest as it can be. And this is going to be told through the perspective of Reinhardt because he's the one I beat it on. If you guys would like me to do a more in-depth guide where I talk about all the individual roles and how they work in this game mode, I will do that if you guys want it. But let's go ahead and get started. So starting off, guys, at the first point, you want to stand here as Reinhardt. This is where the majority of the mobs are going to be coming. This is where you're going to be focusing the main part of your time on the point as Reinhardt. With Torbjorn and Tracer, they're going to be more focused on the inside mobs, or you're worried about the outside. What you're going to do here is you're going to flame strike when there's a whole bunch of enemies and shield when there's not. When there's a whole bunch of enemies, go ahead and flame strike, go ahead and clean them up with your hammer. This is also a time when you want Mercy to be healing or damage buffing you depending on where your health is at. And this is where I think Reinhardt is best when it comes to the first point. So moving on to the second point, you're going to get your first Eradicators. The very first Eradicator is actually going to be before the point. I recommend charging it with Reinhardt and then finishing off with Tracer or Torbjorn's damage. I actually know my friend Shadow can actually solo the first Eradicator. I don't recommend it, but you definitely can do that. Once that Eradicator is down, they'll go ahead and move up and forward off the point until you get to the theater. By then, you should have your Reinhardt ult, and you're going to use on the first initial mobs. This is going to help you clean them up very quickly and easily, so you don't have to worry about them in the later upcoming time you have to stay on the point. So go ahead and ult them, flame strike, and then charge, and hopefully by then you have a lot of them down enough health that you can just finish them off with your hammer. If not, go ahead and back off to the point and let your DPS finish them off. Once you're back on the point, what you're going to do is just shield from the incoming damage from the front of the point. Your DPS should be focusing the enemies that spawn behind you. The reason why I don't recommend focusing the enemies in front is there's just too many of them and they can overwhelm you very easily, especially on Legendary difficulty. Instead, once you get the point cap, go ahead and back off, go around the building, and that way you can use the corner for protection and just slowly take them out. Once they're all out, you can move on to the church. Once you're done with that, you're going to go ahead and move on to the church for the third point. There's going to be a bunch of enemies that spawn in front, an Eradicator, and a couple drones. What I recommend for this part is go ahead and pulse bomb it if you have a Tracer pulse bomb. If not, just DPS them down normally. So guys, when you get to the third point, don't immediately start it up. What I recommend is go ahead and setting up in these positions. The first one is for Torbjorn. This is where you're going to put up his turret. Now, you're not going to sit up here as Torbjorn, and if your turret does go down, go ahead and put it back on the point. Don't climb back up here, but this is a good spot and usually won't get focused down, and it has a very good field of view. And this will help you out a lot. Next, this is Tracer spot. Where she's going to stand is basically going to prevent enemies from spawning up there, and all you're going to have to worry about is the enemies at the front. This is where Reinhardt comes in. Your Reinhardt's going to be standing in the doorway area. And what he's going to be doing in this doorway area is basically corralling the enemies and preventing them from coming in. So as you look here, I'm just hammering them and continually flame striking them to prevent them from coming in the doorway. Now, occasionally Eradicator might come in. What you're going to do when Eradicator comes in is go ahead and charge it. Once charged, just back off. Don't worry about DPS any further, because it'll either do one or two things. One, will go in further. This is where you're going to have your Torbjorn and Tracer take him out, or he's going to go out. Don't worry about killing and finishing off Eradicators. You're more likely going to die if you do that. Just focus on preventing the enemies from getting in. You're just going to rinse and repeat until you capture the point. Once you capture the point, you can proceed outside and kill the last bit of enemies, and then proceed to the payload phase. Now moving on to the payload phase. During the payload phase, you as Reinhardt are going to be focusing splicers, bombs, and bastions, while your Tracer and Torbjorn should be focused on the enemy adds such as the Eradicators and the normal enemies. Now, they will be assisting you with the bastions because almost everyone needs to be focusing that. But for the majority of the round as Reinhardt, you can be focusing the splicers, bombs, and bastions. At the very start of this round, you have two enemies spawn on left and right hand side. If you don't have your ult yet as Reinhardt, I recommend using this time to actually build up your ult with a flame strike because there are two enemies that line up perfectly here at the start. So go ahead and flame strike these enemies initially and it should help build up your ult. Now, getting further in here, your splicers will start spawning. Just go ahead and start hitting them with your hammer. If they group up nicely, go ahead and use your flame strike so you can build up your ult faster. Once you get the 3-minute mark or so, you're going to have bombs start spawning. During this time, you're not going to be DPSing the bombs. Instead, you're going to be focused on killing adds. So what you're going to be doing as Reinhardt is go ahead and flame striking far away adds when they're grouped up, and then hammering splicers when they get close. As soon as the bomb is about to get to the payload and it starts its explosive animation, what you're going to do is charge the bomb away. So I recommend staying nice and close to the payload so you can do this. Now you're just going to rinse and repeat for the following bombs. Once you get to the 1 minute and 58 second mark, you're going to start having bastions. There will be an audio cue that plays to let you know when a bastion spawns. Make sure if you guys are in voice comms to call out the location of the bastion. Once you call out whether side he's on, left or right, you're going to focus him down. As Reinhardt, I recommend using your ult on him and then charging him. During that time period, either your Tracer or Torbjorn should use their ult so you can DPS them down very quickly. I recommend alternating off the Tracer and Molten Core, so if Tracer uses a Pulse Bomb on the first Bastion, you use your Molten Core on the second Bastion. That way you always have an ult for the Bastion, you can get him down very quick. Because if you don't get him down quick enough, then you're going to have too many adds to kill, and it can get very hectic, especially on Legendary difficulty where their damage is immense. Now guys, as you can see from the footage, if this happens to you where you're down to a couple seconds left, you don't have to wipe immediately. If there's only a couple seconds left, the enemies will actually despawn if you just wait it out. Now of course you're going to go through with payload with a lot less health, which will make the next part a little bit harder, but it's still feasible to save and you shouldn't give up. Once you're done defending the payload, you're going to be moving on to moving the payload. Now it's going to have the same mechanics as you did in the previous mode. But instead of this time, it's going to have ulting bastions. So just do what you did before for the ulting bastions as you would for the normal turned bastions. And you should be able to get through this no problem. Once you're done with the payload phase, you're going to be moving on to the Orisa phase. With this first Orisa, don't actually DPS her. Instead, you're going to be going to the right hand side to kill this first bastion. Once he's down, I recommend killing the first Eradicator here. That way he doesn't trouble you later when you go back to kill the Orisa. So go ahead and DPS him down. Once he's down, you're going to be going into this right hand room here. Once in this right hand room, I recommend getting everyone having armor and getting heals to the people who need it. Once that is done and your barrier is back up, go ahead and proceed to the next room to the left. Once you're up in the left hand room, you're going to proceed up to the next bastion. Bastion is going to be sitting right here in this window area. Go ahead and charge him. Then put up your shield and let Tracer and Torbjorn DPS. Until he's dead, you're going to keep holding up your shield. If your charge does come up again, go ahead and charge him again. Once he's dead though, go ahead and move on to the left hand side here, drop down and walk over to the staircase. Now in this staircase, you're actually safe from him shooting you if you stand in the middle of it. So go ahead and DPS him safely from here and have your Reinhardt charge the Bastion when he can. And when he can't, just back off and keep DPSing him. Now sometimes an Eradicator might spawn here. Don't worry about that. You might need to shield his Reinhardt from it. But once the Bastion's down, go ahead and kill that Eradicator. After that, go ahead and move on to the right hand side and do the same thing. Once you have all the Bastions down in this room, what you're going to do is you're going to move back to the front and kill the first Orisa. Once the first Orisa is down, the second Orisa will spawn. You will have a short period of time before the first ulting bastion spawns, so use this time to DPS Orisa. Once the first ulting bastion spawns, go ahead and go up in this right hand room, or you can go outside if you want and set up your Torbjorn turn and Molten Core the bastion when he comes, charge him and get him down very quickly. Once he's down, proceed to kill the second Orisa. Once the second Orisa is down, the last two Orisa will spawn. You're just going to be focusing DPS as much as you can on these last two Orisas before the final ulting bastion will spawn. If you're not able to get the Orisas down in this time, that's perfectly fine. Just kill the last ulting bastion. Once he's down, go ahead and finish off the Orisas. Hopefully, if you did this fast enough, you should be able to beat it in the time limit. If not, it might take a couple retries. Remember, when it comes to this, it's really about ult management when it comes to this final round, is making sure you use them wisely to DPS your correct targets. If you guys have any more questions about this, please let me know in the comments below. And remember guys, to keep on chewing, and I'll keep on slaying. See you guys in the next video. Bye bye.